take a flamethrower to the corruption, to move the agencies, is a man who cannot serve a second term. And that is one more reason why, Trump is the right person for the job.
And cannot be immune for another 4 years of actions taken while in office. Very interestingly.
Well,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about Trump saying he was in favor of terminating parts of the Constitution?
No, that's been misread.
That's not what he said.
You want me to read exactly what he said?
No.
Let me read exactly.
You can read it, but I'll tell you what he meant. I'll tell you what he meant as a guy who actually worked for him in the Oval Office. What he meant is that the Constitution has been shredded, not by him, but by those who have used the FBI as a political weapon, that have used the DOJ to target parents at school board meetings, that have used FISA warrants against innocent people, that have used a Russian agent for a Steele dossier to acquire surveillance warrants. The Truth Social post is that the Constitution has already been shredded. That's what he meant.
Yeah, but I mean, this is exactly what he said. He said a massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. It sounds there that he is condoning the termination of parts of the Constitution.
No, he's saying what happened that's exactly what happened. Not condoning, that is what already happened.
So this goes to the whole, what did they call him for 4 years? They called him a Nazi, a fascist, and a dictator. Now, if that was what he meant in that statement, if he was a fascist and a dictator, then why didn't he deploy the 82nd Airborne to Congress? Why did he not allow the tanks to roll? I know this man. This is an individual whose daughter is converted to Orthodox Judaism, whose grandchildren are Jewish. He's the one who's called an anti-Semite and a bigot. He's married to an immigrant. This man loves America. You don't have to believe me, but I'm the guy who worked for him. This man has decided to put himself through that hell again. I don't know if I could do that. My father was tortured by secret police officers. Till the day he died, he had scars on his wrists from where they tied him together and hung him from the ceiling of the torture chamber. With that family background, I'm not sure I could have done what he did 3 weeks ago in Mar-a-Lago to say, you know what, I'm going to do it again. So the idea that he's some kind of dictator who's shredding up the Constitution, it's bogus, it's garbage. He is saying that is what has happened, and our founding fathers would never have believed it would have happened. That's what it was not well, phrased, but that's, I guarantee you, what he meant. And if it were the obverse, then he would still be in office right now, and there would actually be, FEMA camps of Democrats, but there aren't. There are 100 people in solitary 3 miles from Congress, January 6th detainees who haven't even been arraigned in 2 years. We have a right as Americans to swift justice. For 2 years, people kept in solitary before they are even arraigned before a judge. That's the reality of America. There aren't Democrats in solitary for 2 years. There's only Republicans. So let's have a little clarity about what he did for 4 years and what the Democrats did to him and to his supporters.
Hey, Sebastian, just because I don't think I get to ask this question any other time, since you do get to hang out with him like as a human, can you, and I don't think anybody actually knows the answer to the question, outside of everything we see, which is a lot of presentation, what is he actually like as a human? How would you define him as a human?
That's so funny. That is so funny. Wherever I go, it doesn't matter what I'm lecturing on, whether it's jihadi ideology or Democrat or Republican politics. Sooner or later, that is the only question people ask me. What's he like?
I'm a crazy liberal, but I'm still interested in
of course.
Who he is.
It's the human question. It's the human question. I'm going to disappoint you, because if you've been alive for the last 20 years, if you've turned on a television and turned on The Apprentice, if you've read a newspaper, you know exactly what President Trump is like. And look, I grew up in England. I went to a private school for 14 years. I went to debate club. I spoke Latin, okay? So can you imagine what it was like for me to work for this guy, okay, from Queens? That was a very big culture shock for me. This is not exactly my cup of tea. But behind closed doors, he is exactly the same as he is in front of 60,000 people in a soccer stadium, in a football stadium. He's exactly the same as he is on TV, on a debate stage, talking about little Marco and Sleepy Joe. He is utterly, whether you like him or not, he's utterly authentic. He's not the Janus-faced, two-faced bastards of DC on both the Republican and Democrat side. And what's he really like? I'll tell you one story and then I'm going to jump, but I'm still going to DM you, Mario, my cell phone, and we'll just pick some time to have a longer discussion. So I'm in the Middle East right now, and I gave a speech early today about.
Where in the Middle East, by the way, Sebastian? I'm in Dubai at the moment.
I'm in Israel with 350 of my listeners. Okay. We've got all our listeners here on a little kind of cruise.
Where in Israel are you?
I'm in Jerusalem. We were in Jerusalem all day. So,
I'm not trying to dox you. Where in Jerusalem are you?
What?
I'm not trying to dox you. I'm just wondering, where in Jerusalem are you?
I'm not going to reveal my location with my wife in Jerusalem.
I lived there for a year. I'm just interested in what your view was. That's it.
I'll let you continue asking the question, Sebastian. About how Trump is.
Yeah, as a guy who's appeared in an ISIS video, I'm not going to tell you where I am in Jerusalem.
You've appeared in an ISIS video.
Yes, he has.
I have. They put clips of me. Zawahiri made a video with clips of me on Fox News. It's not very nice.
Yep.
Anyway,
I've seen it.
So to explain to these hundreds of people here because everybody wants to know what he's really like. And we're in Jerusalem, and I told a story. Clinton, 23 years ago, promised to recognize Jerusalem and move the embassy. He broke that promise. So did George Bush. So did Obama. For 23 years, every 6 months, the incumbent president had to tell Jerusalem, sorry, we may have passed legislation to recognize Jerusalem and move the embassy, but we're not going to do it right now because reasons. President Trump called a meeting of the NSC at principals level, which is unusual. Principals means, not directors of directorates in the NSC, it means the cabinet. And he brought the cabinet members to the skiff, to the situation room, and he said, gentlemen, lady, we are moving the embassy. I'm recognizing Jerusalem. Only 3 members, and I'm not going to tell you who didn't, only 3 members of his cabinet supported his decision. And legends of the Marine Corps, like Mad Dog Mattis, the warrior monk, were such cuckolded cowards that in front of their colleagues and in front of his commander-in-chief said, Mr. President, you can't do that. You will ignite World War III, and I don't have enough Marines to guard our embassies. What was my boss's response? And this will give you an idea of how much of an anti-Semite and corrupt bigot he is. He said, I am doing this for 3 reasons. Number 1, during the campaign, I promised the American people that we would finally keep our promise to our ally. Number 2, I'm doing this because I promised the Israelis that we would do this after 23 years of broken promises. And then lastly, in front of all of them, shaming all of them except the 3 who agreed with him, he said, I am doing this because this is the right thing to do. That's who Donald Trump is, and that's the man who they will tell you is a racist, a bigot, and a corrupt politician.
Sebastian, I've actually, Yeah, I actually really, and I'm surprised by a lot of what you said. And I've got a lot more questions that I'll save for your next appearance. So I'll
write them down.
Yeah, I will, and I'll prep them.
We're going to have a ton of questions for you.
Yeah, and I'll get the audience. I did a tweet for the audience as well. So everyone, there's a tweet there. I'll pin it above in a bit. We can all ask your questions. We'll choose a few of them and ask them in a special segment with Sebastian. But he really enjoyed this, and I appreciate you staying.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
just really quick for Sebastian.
Let's a second, everyone. Let's wrap this up because Sebastian has been very kind with his time, and he said it's 3 a.m.
Yeah, let me ask him a question, Kim.
So,
really quick.
Hey, Tara, why don't
let me ask him a question, Sebastian? I'm just curious, really quick. Do you foresee Donald Trump having the ability to win?
Oh, absolutely, but only if local patriot citizens fix the election process, because the GOP won't do it. The midterm elections weren't a referendum on Donald Trump. That's absolute bullshit. Fetterman, electing Fetterman is not because of Donald Trump. Electing brain dead people like Fetterman is because Pennsylvania had 50 days of election, and half of the people in Pennsylvania voted before even the first debate with Oz. So in those states where we can't fix it to have election days, the GOP locally, because RNC won't do it, Ronna McDaniel won't do it. I am so excited that this warrior lawyer, Harmeet Dillon, has announced that she's going to challenge Ronna McDaniel. She's amazing. If locally, if we can't fix it so that we have an election day in America with voter ID, I'm really, it pisses me off to say this as a conservative. We have to get more organized than the Democrats are. We have to go to the old people's homes. We have to, collect ballots.
We're going to start using mail-in ballots.
Nothing illegal. Nothing
or blockchain.
Nothing
blockchain
illegal.
Would be the way to cut out any chance of cheating.
Yeah, we can't initiate blockchain in 2 years, but we just have to get a better ground game. If we have a fair election, I mean, one last thing. Think of this data. This is a data set. This is just an empirical data set. President Trump got 64 million votes in 2015. 4 years later, he got 73 million. That's after 4 years of being called a Russian asset, a racist, a bigot, an Islamophobe, and a Nazi, and a white supremacist. He got 9.5 million more votes after 4 years of that. And he increased his share of he got more Hispanic and black votes than any Republican since 1963. So absolutely. And by the way, he got more votes than any other incumbent president in history. So when conservatives say, he's toast, he's done, you're talking about the man who received more votes than any other incumbent president in US history. They have to say that because he is still not a politician. He is still not a politician, and nobody owns him. And that's why he can win, but he can only win if we have fair and free elections. And in those states where we can't make it election day, we've just got to outgame the Democrats and out-organize them. And it's a tall order. It's a very tall order. But I tell you what, I was at Mar-a-Lago for the election. I was there with the president watching the returns. What was my wife doing? I was eating, coconut shrimp in Mar-a-Lago with the president. My wife, that day for the midterms, left our house at 3:30 a.m. I saw her come home because of the security cameras that are connected to my phone. I was in Mar-a-Lago having a good time. My wife comes home at 9:45 in the evening. 3:30 in the morning to 9:45. She wasn't eating cocktail shrimp. What was she doing? She was the senior election officer for our district. And my wife hates politics. She detests it like the plague. If my wife thinks it is important, I can guarantee you nobody cheated in her district. If my wife, who hates politics, can make sure we have a clean election in our part of Virginia, guess what? Everybody has a role to play. And it should be irrespective of your political color. If you think elections should result in the people being represented by the person that they choose, then you have a role to play. And it can be done. It will be hard, but he can win. Thank you, guys. God bless.
Thank you so much, Seb. I think that's where this sort of goes full circle, right back to that comment that was made about what Trump said about the Constitution. and being taken so far out of context. It's exactly what Seb just mentioned. If the elections aren't free and fair, then what are we even doing here?
Thank you, Sebastian. I'd wait for your DM, man, and we can organize a space.
I'm doing it now.
To question you. I appreciate it, man.
I'm
Thank you so
very
much,
much
Sebastian.
looking forward to that, Sebastian, and thank you for your time, guys. I will also take off. So
hang on. I have to thank you to Warrior. You know who you are, because he's the guy who told me about your first spaces last week, and he's the reason I'm on this. I'm on this one. So God bless you, Warrior. Thank you.
Thank you, Warrior. We owe you one.
Hey, Sebastian, I know we disagree on a lot. I just want to say you are a good debater, though.
Very well spoken.
It was
as well.
a debate club in school, guys.
So Sebastian, appreciate it. I'll wait for your DM, and you're welcome anytime. So it would be good to get the space organized. Thanks a lot, man. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Ian, I'll let you do just a quick refresh of the room, and I know a lot of people are waiting for the next drop, the next file drop.
I don't think it's going to be tonight, but yeah, we'll give a refresh.
Yeah, just a quick refresh of the room, and if it doesn't happen tonight, everyone, so what you need to do right now, so it's perfect timing. I'm going to pin it above, and it's retweeted on my account for the next space to set your reminders, so when the next drop happens, I've just got the space. Let me retweet it again and pin it above. So you have to go to that link, and then click on set reminders, and then you'll get a reminder set for when we do the next space, for when the next drop happens. So we did this one. I was literally, Ian, I was butt naked about to go to sleep, and then someone messaged me like, "Did you see this?" Like literally seconds after the drop.
And I called you.
Damn it! Yeah, was it yourself?
Now we know
was it
how
you?
Mario sleeps.
Yeah. So immediately I'm like, all right, perfect. I wake up the team, and by the way, this is streaming on YouTube as well, Ian.
Nice.
A lot of we've got a bunch of people watching on YouTube, which we never did before. So it's going well, and they've got a good chat going. But yeah, I'll let you refresh the room. It's been a really good debate, and I think we've had a few cool guests come on stage. What we've seen. So again, for the refresh, what was the drop today? What was the news today? But more importantly, just a very brief overview of the drop that we saw last time when you did the first space.
Friday,
if you summarize that, that'll be great. Yeah.
All right. So last Friday, as we all know, they dropped, Matt Taibbi dropped the first instance of the Twitter files, and it contained a lot of information about how Twitter had colluded with the campaign for Joe Biden to suppress certain tweets, right? And later on, it turned out that they had made the unilateral decision to suppress the New York Post's coverage of the Hunter Biden laptop story, which, as we all know, is totally 100% real. It's not a bunch of nonsense, right? That is basically what happened last week. And so everybody's been wondering, why is it that the second drop hasn't happened yet, right? And Elon Musk did promise, well, he didn't promise, but he said that it would come the next day, and then nothing happened. And then 2-3 days later, and it's still not here. And so today we find out that a certain man, an individual named Jim Baker or James Baker, who used to be this huge FBI guy, let's put it mildly, who was responsible for the Steele dossier investigation and so on, he had been terminated at the FBI and went to work for Twitter. Okay, so he got fired today for basically suppressing the release of the Twitter files, and Elon Musk had no idea this man was the one vetting all of the information, all of the files that were being sent to Matt Taibbi and to Barry Weiss, who are the two journalists who were covering this the files. He had no idea this man was suppressing these things, right? He had no idea this man was still working at Twitter, so he let him go. He was exited, so to speak. And so Matt Taibbi put out a Twitter thread today, basically clarifying what happened. So he said, thread Twitter files supplemental. On Friday, the first installment of Twitter files is published here. We expected to publish more over the weekend. Many wondered why there was a delay. We can now tell you that part of the reason why. On Tuesday, that's today, Twitter Deputy General Counsel and former FBI General Counsel Jim Baker was fired. Among the reasons, vetting the first batch of Twitter files without acknowledgement of new management. Now, who's new management? That's Elon Musk. He is the new management at Twitter. And he was vetting these files, working ostensibly as a lawyer, as a general counsel for Twitter, to disseminate the information over to Matt Taibbi and to whoever else, right? Barry Weiss being the other person of these files, and he was suppressing it. The process for, and I'm continuing what he said here, the process of producing the Twitter files involved the delivery to two journalists, Barry Weiss and me being Matt Taibbi, via a lawyer close to the new management, meaning Elon Musk. So basically, he worked at Twitter, and then he sent it to another lawyer. And he was acting as a gatekeeper, essentially, this Jim Baker. However, after the initial batch, things became complicated. Over the weekend, while we were both dealt with obstacles to new searches, so it was very hard for them to dig through the files, it was Barry Weiss who discovered that the person in charge of releasing the files was somebody named Jim. When asked who Jim's last name was, the answer came back, Jim Baker. My jaw hit the floor, says Weiss. The first batch of files both reporters received was marked Spectra Baker emails. That is very crucial. Baker is a controversial figure. He has been something of a zealot of FBI controversies dating back to 2016, from the Steele dossier to the Alpha Bank server mess. He resigned in 2018 after an investigation into leaks to the press. The news that Baker was reviewing the Twitter files surprised everyone involved, to say the least. New Twitter chief Elon Musk acted quickly to exit Baker on Tuesday. Reporters resumed searches through the Twitter files material, a lot of it today. So it only started today. They only got back into the files today. The next installment of the Twitter files will appear on Barry Weiss's timeline. Stay tuned. So that's where we are at so far. And the reason why we haven't seen any files since then was because they had very limited access to the files, and it was being suppressed by Jim Baker, who was, as Seb Gorka quite succinctly pointed out to all of us, was a guy at the FBI. He's basically a deep state guy. Right now, you can listen back to what he said, and the term is, I know, a bit conspiratorial, but it's conspiracy fact, right? These guys are essentially the government, the de facto government, and that is what they do. They think they run the place.
And when you say deep state, what do you mean by that term?
When I say deep state, I'm not referring to some Illuminati government. I'm talking about bureaucrats, essentially people who have been in the FBI or any of the other three-letter agencies for the past 20, 25, 30 years, appointees of some previous administration who've never left. They basically think they know better than any elected official, right? Any elected president, whether it is going to be Trump or DeSantis or anybody else. They think that they run the place. They run the show. They know better than anybody else. That's the deep state. And they will do anything in their power to undermine any existing administration if it means, getting their way. And that's exactly what happened, as Seb Gorka he explained quite well. That's what happened to the Trump administration, is that they couldn't fill in these positions. About 3,000 to 4,000 people. These positions could not be filled, so they had to appoint these people that were provided to them by the GOP, and the GOP obviously being establishment, got all these people back in, and these people had no intention of working under Trump or working for him, so they worked against him. That is what I refer to by the deep state.
I think it's important when you say deep state and refer to Baker here. I think it's important to note that we don't know the facts yet.
Of course,
we just know that we just know that he was fired by Elon for obviously interfering in some way in the release of these documents, which I don't agree with. But to just come out and say that.
Well, we don't know if it was
a question I just received in the chat was regarding what you're talking about right now, and they asked, is there a chance, and I want to know from Ian, do you think that there's a chance that Baker effectively deleted or modified access to those Twitter files that were supposed to be released by now?
I don't believe so. I don't believe he has the ability to do that. I just think that he has the ability to just, to determine what gets sent out. So effectively just acts as a gatekeeper. I wouldn't be too worried about him being able to delete the files. They'd be able to undo that pretty easily.
So before, I've got a question on this, but before that, Brian, as a liberal, and I think Fidget, you're still there, guys, what are your honest, I think, I don't, for me, objectively speaking, I think the discussion with Sebastian was, before I give my opinion, I enjoyed it, man. Like, whatever my take is politically, I enjoyed it. I'd love I know you disagree with some things, but what was your takeaway from that discussion? And that goes to Brian and Fidget.
Really quick, Mario, before you go to them, can I just quickly say, even though Kim had to leave, that none of that would have even happened without Kim.com. And I just want to say massive shout out to him for guiding that conversation and those questions and making that happen, and then Sebastian for being here and opening up and discussing it freely with us. I mean, that was a moment in history, and so many people are thanking me because they heard a side of things that they've never heard before. So
not only this,
live.
and not only this, he just jumped in at 4 in the morning, and now it's 3:47 in the morning in Israel. And this is a beautiful thing about the space. It's like, this is not a pre-prepped interview. He's not ready sitting in a suit. He's sitting at home comfortably at 3 in the morning and decided to jump in just to share his perspective on things and his story. So it just makes it a lot more personal than any other scripted interview you see on TV or most other channels, which I really enjoy. It just makes it very, very personal. It just makes you feel like you're sitting on a table with him and he's telling you a story at 2, 3 in the morning before heading to bed. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really quick, I'm reading something that says breaking new documents have uncovered a secret Twitter backdoor U.S. government officials used to censor information about COVID vaccines and most definitely the 2020 elections.
It's not exactly news. It's not breaking.
I was wondering, is this new, or is this the same old?
It is something that has been revealed in the lawsuit that's currently ongoing between, I believe, Missouri. Eric Schmidt is suing the Biden administration, and essentially the DHS and all these other organizations have the ability to contact Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to get things removed. It's basically a form, an online form that they can just fill in and get things taken down. That is something that I think Elon Musk needs to look into because, I mean, on the one hand, it does make sense to have that. You need to have a direct line to social media. If, for instance, a terrorist is planning an attack and you need to take it down if they're organizing on any given social media platform, I think that's necessary. But on the other hand, it has been, as we've seen here, used to suppress information that would be of the public's interest to know about. And so this is something very, I think, that will be revealed in some upcoming set of Twitter files, because Biz Stone, the former CEO of Twitter, he took over after Jack briefly. He said that there are many, many stories that they suppressed, and they're quite happy about suppressing these stories. So that's something Elon's going to have to look into. It's something that Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss and whoever else finally has access to the files is going to have to cover. I'm very curious as to what stories they suppressed.
I got to say, one of the most profound moments of what Sebastian had to say tonight, which really impressed upon me. The swamp is so deep and the corruption is so thick.
If you're speaking, I cannot hear you.
Hello, no, we can. Everyone can hear him. Ian, you can't hear him. It's a bit of a glitch. But yes, Stephen, everyone else can hear you. So
okay,
Ian's lost.
Yeah, I think Sebastian made one of the strongest arguments for Trump that for 2024 that I didn't even really consider, in terms of the corruption's so deep and the swamp's so deep, the corruption's so thick that it's going to take somebody that's not up for re-election, that isn't even seeking re-election, and somebody that we already know is kind of a rogue maverick to come in there with hammer swinging to do it. I don't really think I can't think of anybody else that I would trust to really take on those things with the tenacity that it would take than somebody that's really not up or not seeking re-election, honestly.
Before I get another speaker to speak, just reminding everyone, we're winding down the space, getting a final few speakers to give us their thoughts. We'll be back live for the next drop in, I don't know when, depending when the next drop is, but make sure you set your reminders. So it's pinned above. I've retweeted on my account. Cannot remind you enough. You don't want to miss the next live session. Make sure you set reminders. There's already a few thousand. Oh shit. Okay. Or almost 5,000 already registered. So that's good. Make sure you register there. Set your reminders there. If you haven't already, it's retweeted on my account and it's pinned above, so we can see you whenever the next drop happens. I'll give the mic to Harrison. Go ahead, man.
Oh, I just wanted to respond, but I'll wait.
So, kind of a simple journalistic question that if anybody has contact with Elon or Barry or Matt Taibbi, why did they do the release at 6 p.m. on a Friday when nobody's paying attention to the news? Because that's the time where news goes to die. I'm hoping the second drop won't be this Friday because nobody will be paying attention again. This last time we saw a drop, the next day Trump tweets something that completely something that completely distracts from the whole message of the actual Twitter files. And then by when Monday comes and everybody turns on the news again, everybody's talking about what Trump said rather than what actually happened in the substance of the news drop on Friday. Why is Elon choosing to release it on a Friday evening?
I can answer that. I don't think it's deliberate, but I think it's, in a way, it sort of ignores the news cycle. Because what are people talking about on Twitter all day, right? It's not necessarily stuff that's been in the mainstream media. What people are talking about on Twitter, most people, right, what's on the back of their minds are the Twitter files. It doesn't really matter what the media says anymore. I think that the media in general is becoming obsolete. It really is, right? The online media is not going to be obsolete anytime soon. However, the mainstream media, what's on TV and cable news and so on, that is most certainly becoming obsolete, and they know it. And so I don't think we really need to worry about that 24-hour news cycle anymore, the weekend news cycle. I don't think that is as serious a concern as it once was. I think the impact of the Twitter files, you could release it at 4 a.m. in the morning and people will read it in the morning and care about it. So I'm not super concerned. You say, yeah, the media isn't covering it, but they're choosing not to cover it, and they're going to use any number of excuses they want to not cover it. As we've seen now, they're calling it a nothing burger.
For how much of
Wikipedia is trying to censor it. But I'm not super concerned about that because I think the future, and maybe I'm being really bullish about this, right? But I think that Twitter represents the future of journalism, and we won't be worried about these news cycles as much as we used to be anymore. I think that in the future, news will be coming out as is without any worries or concerns about what people are talking about at any other time. It won't be news stations dictating what what gets talked about. God, I need some water. Yeah, what gets talked about at all. I think that people are going to talk about what they want to talk about, and Twitter is the perfect medium for it. So it's just a matter of time before.
And I want to add one more thing to Ian. I always go through the audience. I'm seeing a lot of journalists. I want to applaud the journalists that have the balls to share something that's worth sharing, despite it being on Twitter. Even if you see Twitter as a competitor, I think you're doing the right thing there. Not from a, also from a business perspective as well. Because I just think if you keep ignoring platforms like this, it's just another reason for people to stop listening to you. So I just want to applaud, and I'm looking at the journalists in the audience, and some of them do share, a lot of things that are said here. And I'll applaud you guys. And for those that are ignoring it, ignore it at your own peril. Tara, any final words? I'll let Fidjiro actually go, and then Tara, you have the final word for the space. Fidjiro, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if it wasn't apparent, I'm obviously not a Trump fan, but that doesn't change the ability to have a conversation just about anything, right? And I think that it's really, really important, especially in a Twitter space or in a more decentralized or free space, to think more about listening rather than talking. Right? My mother always told me that one of the most valuable things you can do, because 95% of the time I know what somebody's going to say before they finish the first 3 words of their sentence. But there's power in letting other people talk. It also teaches you to listen. What I took away from the most interesting things from the Gorka exchange, the same thing that Stephen did, which is I always believed that money corrupts, power corrupts absolutely, right? And that is no more prevalent than in politics, right? Regardless of, and those two questions were connected. I was asking who Trump was because I wanted to see who he might be without money driving his political decisions. And then the idea of him not having to be driven for another term. I think those both highlighted one of my most important things that I was trying to discuss in this space that I think could take an entire space in and of itself, which is, I earlier mentioned that that Twitter most likely did most of its decisions based on its fiduciary duty to its public shareholders, right? The argument to the opposite, that decisions weren't made for money, is literally saying that he could have been sued by every shareholder for breaching fiduciary duty, when there's an agreement that most of the listeners lean left, and apparently all of the people who most of the people who work there leaned left as well. Right? That's not coincidental. It's not coincidental that a general who leaned left, or I'm sorry, an FBI attorney who leaned left went to Twitter. the inference that means that the government sent him or he was working for the government versus the facts that he was likely left-leaning and worked for a left-leaning company all leads towards the idea that these decisions were most likely made for the benefit of the company and to maximize money. And I just think that's really, really important to remember, to not just leap to assumptions and gaps in knowledge and take.
Well, I disagree with you.
That's okay.
Yeah, I know. That's the beauty of the space, right?
Mario, you gotta let me loose, man. You gotta let me loose.
Who's this, bro? Easy, bro. Easy, man. Bro, I'm a nice guy, but man, Ian and Tara would be ruthless. Yeah, well, they'll kick you out.
Yeah,
That's just, I'm the only one.
I just talk over him,
Yeah, and then Tara will mute everyone.
He's popular in the NFT space. I'd love to hear what he has to say on substantive topics.
Fun.
I don't
bro,
think they did it for money because they actually lost money doing all of this. That's just fact.
Yeah, Ian, you're the only one. You've got a brain on you. To say this is all for money.
Excuse me. Okay, he's out. I'm just kidding.
Unreal. It's because this is the reality, guys. We all know.
Yeah.
We all know that this is.
My space is bugged. We need to end the space.
Oh, okay. Ian. FUD, yeah. So FUD, it's actually
closing thoughts, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Mario.
of course. Let me tell FUD before you do. Just FUD. The reason that you're muted, not because you're speaking badly, just Ian couldn't hear you. It's actually glitching. But I'll bring you up in the next space, man. You can give us your thoughts because space starts to glitch after a few hours. I'm not making this up. He couldn't hear other speakers earlier. I'll say one thing, and then Tara, of course, as always, you'll end it. I just want to say for everyone, like the purpose for doing this, I'll always remind everybody is that I've always said this: media is biased. Again, I'm generalizing, but to make a point, media is biased for various reasons: advertisers, political stance, etc. Social media is full of echo chambers, and this is the problem we're trying to solve. You can see on stage people disagreeing, people from both sides of every debate that we have. And we have no incentive to be biased in any way. So that's the goal of doing this. And I think we've done a pretty good job so far, and appreciate you all for being part of it. Tara, I'll give you the final word. And by the way, before Tara speaks, just remember, everyone, set your reminders. It's on my profile, it's pinned above. So before Tara ends the space, make sure you set your reminders. I'll give Tara the final word. And of course, Ian, Kim, and every other panelist, thank you so much. Tara, the mic is all yours.
I just really ultimately want to commend everyone who came up here, behaved like an adult, and spoke freely, openly, with different opinions, without turning into personal attacks or anything along those lines, and just how much I appreciate this conversation and hearing from people from both sides of the aisle. And I think, I know that so many in the audience do as well, because they've DM'd me, they've told me, and I understand the people who complain and don't want to hear the other side, I guess you could say. But at the same time, this is exactly what we're all fighting for, is the freedom to speak. And to speak openly, without being shut down, without being censored, without being suppressed. So that applies to everybody, whether you agree with their opinion or not. And so I just want to commend Mario on ensuring that happens, on attempting to make this stage as fair as possible and well-rounded as possible. And I would argue that you've done a better job than any mainstream media network in doing so. So thank you, Mario. If you guys are not following Mario, make sure you're following Mario. Also, go to his profile, click the bell icon, and make sure you have notifications turned on. That way you know immediately when his pieces start or when he tweets, and you get alerted. So, and also just for everyone up here who spoke and came up and braved, I think at one point there were close to 15,000 people in here at a time. So everyone who spoke, who you agree with or want to hear more from them, make sure you shoot them a follow. If later you decide you don't want to be following them, you can always change that. But I think it's just a nice gesture to show people that you appreciate them coming up and sharing their voices. Again, thank you, Mario. Ian, Kim's not here anymore, Sebastian, and all of the speakers who came up and spoke and added to the conversation. I feel like it was another historical space, and I've learned so much here just in such a little amount of time. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. See you at the next drop. I appreciate you all. Ian, you're a beast. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.